Senses packet, and this is covering the anatomy of the eye. It's pretty short and straightforward, so we'll just cover it pretty quick. Starting out, we have the conjunctiva, which is clear. It's not the white yet. And it covers the eye and the eyelid. So this diagram over here is a little out of proportion. I drew the eyelids a little bit away from the eye so that I could demonstrate what it is. But the conjunctiva lines the inside of the eye and over the eye. And that's why, even though it feels like it's going behind the eye, whenever you put on a contact, sometimes it can slide up and it'll feel like, oh, it's going to go behind my eye, but it can only go so far up into these areas because it makes a complete loop around the eye. The eye is actually sealed off from the outside. Moving on, we have the lacrimal apparatus, and that is this right over here. It's the lacrimal apparatus. And that's what secretes the lysozyme. And the lysozyme is what has a chemical inside of it, or it's what fights bacteria infections or bacterial infections. So it secretes lysozyme. So as it secretes, it kind of starts up here and it secretes into the eye, and that's what helps fight infection, and then it will drain. And that's why through this passage, and that's why when you cry or you get it teary-eyed for any reason, you can kind of taste it, is because your nose will start to run. So it'll run and you'll have to blow your nose, and then it'll go down the back of your throat, and that's why you can taste your tears. So that covers the lacrimal apparatus and the lysozyme. Moving on to the anatomy or breakdown of the eye, I have this kind of three-dimensional drawing, which I will label off of, but I'll also draw a two-dimensional drawing off to the side, so that's a little bit clearer. So starting out, we have the cornea. And on a two-dimensional drawing, this would be the cornea. And we have the lens, which is back here. And I'm drawing these a little out of order, but just so you can kind of see the function of how they all kind of fit into place. So this is the lens. We have the sclera, which, where's my line? We can put sclera. And it forms the white of the eye. And actually the sclera and the cornea are made of the same thing. It's just the way that the chemical is actually structured and the way it actually lays down that it makes the cornea clear, or so that we can see through it, and everything else is white, but it's the same type of material. We have the retina, to draw this out. Let's see. Actually, we'll go with the iris. So, and the iris is where we see the color of the eye. And it'll make this type of function. And that's where we see whenever we draw anatomy or we kind of doodle and we put little lines in the eye. That's actually the celiac muscle, but we don't really think of it as that, but it's a sphincter muscle, but you have that in the general term, it's the iris. And then this area here that is open, and that's going to let light through the iris to the lens, and then we have the ciliary body, and it's a muscle-like structure that comes off. And if I was to continue these little streaks around, you'd have your iris, but there's these little fibers that are connecting to the lens, and it runs all the way around the lens. So it would keep going all the way around the lens. And those muscles are what contract and reshape the lens. So this is the ciliary body. And we have the anterior chamber, which is this whole area in here. And then we have our posterior chamber. And there's a space in here that a lot or some diagrams will show as also posterior, but for our test, just know that this is anterior for the iris and posterior is behind the eye. And the posterior chamber is filled with vitreous fluid. And over here we have the optic nerve. And let's see. The retina is the most inner line layer inside the eye. So this dark line right here is the retina. And it's what the image is projected on. So light will project all over the back here and onto the retina, and then travel down the optic nerve. Behind the retina, we have our rods and cones. For the test, all we need to know is that rods see gray and cones see color. That's pretty much all he wanted. And inside, between the sclera, so if I was to slice a section here and bring it out, the first layer on the outside of the eye is the sclera. And then there's a center layer, which is the choroid. And there's the third layer, which is the retina. So that's kind of how this section up here is broken down. And that pretty much covers the basic anatomy of the eye. In another video, I'll go into the other section he has for the eye, but for basic structure anatomy, that's it. I hope that helped you guys out.